What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 33 of the Overview. I'm ChanManV, and we got a super special show ready for you guys today. My co-hosts, of course, Fishstix and Jason Kaplan are both here. What's up, fellas?
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, I'm completely sleep deprived right now because anxiety for this election kept me up all night. I actually couldn't fall asleep.
You literally watching CNN?
Maybe still recovering from BlizzCon too, but excited for this show because got a lot to cover.
Yeah. How about you, Jason? How you doing, man?
Tired as well, but doing good. Glad to be back in California, actually, still.
All right, good stuff. And of course, we've got our special guest, Blizzard Global Esports Director, Mr. Nate Nanzer. Welcome to the show, man. It's an honor to have you, man.
What's up, guys? It's an honor to be here.
Wow.
I've listened to, I've listened to every single episode.
Really? Even the last one? Oh my God, the last one.
Even though, like, for some reason it's not on iTunes anymore.
It is on iTunes. What are you talking about?
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well,
oh wow.
I gotta maybe I messed up my phone. But, no, I love what you guys do. It's super awesome to be here.
Awesome. That's great, man. It's cool that you do listen to it every week. But obviously huge news right now in Overwatch and a lot of things announced at BlizzCon. So it's awesome having you here to get a chance to maybe answer some questions. So we're going to be doing just what we normally do, guys, on the show. But definitely we'll be focused on more of like an interview with Nate here, given that we don't have him for the entire show. So I'm going to start off with some questions, Nate. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. We'll start off with maybe getting to know you a little bit better, because I think a lot of listeners might not know exactly who you are. So how did you land this awesome job of being global esports director?
Super good question. So I've been at Blizzard. I just got my 2-year Stein on Halloween, actually. It's my 2-year anniversary.
Nice.
So
yeah.
I actually, when I started Blizzard, I was on the marketing team. And about a year and a half ago, it was actually Gamescom 2015. I was doing some work on the marketing side around esports, and we had this really cool game, Overwatch, coming out. And I had this idea. I'm a huge traditional sports fan. I played baseball all my life, and huge basketball fan, huge soccer fan. And I was like, why? How come esports is always sort of tries to reinvent the wheel when it comes to sports? Like, why don't we look at like what works in traditional sports and maybe see if some of that stuff can't be applied? So I started putting together this idea that I had that sort of turned into the Overwatch League. And because Blizzard is a really cool place where you have the opportunity, even though you sort of have your day job, it's very entrepreneurial here. Mm-hmm. And I sort of created this plan around Overwatch League and just kept beating people over the head with it until they listened to me, and eventually got a bunch of people excited about it, and it turned into a job. So it's maybe not the most replicable path for others to take, but I think it goes to show like what an awesome place to work Blizzard is. The fact that there's room for people to kind of go outside what your day job is, come up with a really cool plan. And because of the core value here of every voice matters, I got people like Jeff Kaplan and Ray Gresco to listen to my plan, and it kind of evolved from there. But now it's super exciting because I get to wake up every morning and build a sports league from scratch. How many people get to say that?
So yeah, speaking of that plan, the biggest announcement, I think a lot of people would agree, at BlizzCon was the announcement of the Overwatch League. And sounds like a one of the probably most ambitious initiatives in the space, at least currently, in this era of esports. So the announcement hinted at a lot of cool elements that were very similar to traditional esports like NFL, things like free agency, combines, player salaries, franchises. What made you go in this direction with esports? You mentioned that you did see some parallels maybe with sports that you'd like to implement into esports. Like why go that direction?
Well, it came from I've only been at Blizzard 2 years, but I've been working in the games industry since about 2001, and been a huge fan of esports for a really long time. And sort of one of the things I've observed over the years that I think is really cool is how organic esports has come together, and how that audience, like, esports pretty much exists because like people wanted to figure out who was the best at Quake, so they got together and figured out who was the best at Quake. Like, that's really cool. But sort of because it's grown so organically, it's been very fragmented. And I think as we sat down and started thinking around what do we want to do with the Overwatch League, at the highest level, we really wanted to try to professionalize esports. I think if you look across the ecosystem, the player that I care most about is actually the players. Like, and I think universally that players could be treated better. I look at some of these contracts I've seen from esport pros, and they say things like so and so player agrees to sign over his likeness in perpetuity for all the universe. Like, that's crazy. And I think we want to get rid of that stuff from the esport ecosystem and really try to make players give them a real career and have it be less risky. Like, right now, I feel like there's kids they're really gambling their future on becoming an esport pro, and it might not work out, and there's not really a clear path. Whereas in traditional sports, there is a very clear path. Like, it's really, really hard, but if you're a 7-year-old kid in the United States, you actually know the things you need to do to be an NBA basketball player, right? Mm-hmm. Like, get really good, play on an AAU team, go to high school, get signed to a D1 college and get drafted. Like, you actually very clearly know the things. There's a very clear path to doing that. And on esports, I would go around in the last year and a half and talk to these guys that are esport athletes and say, how would you get on your team? And it's like, well, I was really good on ladder and somebody found me and they luckily knew my Skype, or, I posted in Reddit and I ended up getting paired with people. And it's like, that's crazy. Like, there should be a more structured way for people who are super good at video games to get noticed and get signed to professional teams. And then once they're there, to be treated like professional athletes. Like, I, as somebody who played baseball my whole life, when I talk to esport athletes, like, they play for the same reasons that I played traditional sports. Like, they have the same fire, the same drive. They want the same things. And I think we want to create an ecosystem where the best players in the world are celebrated the way they deserve to be celebrated. And if you want players to make more money and you want players to be more celebrated and you want players to have more stability, the best way that you can do that is to make sure that the teams have stability and the teams make more money, because team owners are never going to pay players the way they deserve to be played if they can't make any money and if they're living paycheck to paycheck on sponsorships. So that is a super long answer, but that sort of goes into a little bit of the thinking behind this, and it's really about making sure that we create consistency and stability for teams and players, and that we create accessibility for up and coming players so they actually know the things that they need to do to be a pro.
Yeah, I think that the most important thing is to have the exact plan as to how to get there, and I'm really excited about the combines. I can't wait to see what drills and all, how you're going to measure the players, and I guess what a lot of teams are going to be wanting to look at things like that.
Yeah, well, because it's not just about skill, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Overwatch is a team game, so
Right.
you actually need to know, like, is this guy a jerk? Like, is he going to be easy to get along with?
Yep. That might be the most important thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, does he communicate well? Like, all that stuff is really important. So I think as we think about the way that we'll test players in the combine, it's not just about like who is the best, hit scan aimer. I think it's going to be more about like who is the sort of complete person.
Well, just following up on that really quickly, you mentioned bringing more revenue to the teams and that trickling down to the players and the whole ecosystem. Any initial thoughts as how that's going to be more possible with this league than, I guess, traditional esports models?
Yeah, so we sat down when this plan started. The way we actually started the whole strategy around the Overwatch League was to actually go do like a complete audit of traditional sports. So what's the financial model in the NBA, the NFL, MLS, European football, even the UFC and the WWE, F1 we looked at all across the world of traditional sports and entertainment and tried to understand what are the different financial models, like how do teams make money, how do players make money. And it became really, really clear when we started to look into that in all of the North American sports leagues, and this is true in Europe as well, that the global level sponsorships across the league account for a fraction of the total sponsorship money in the ecosystem. And the reason that we're going down the path of city-based teams is not just because, for the very good reasons of fostering fandom. I think you even saw like the Reddit reaction to the Overwatch League announcement. I thought was very telling, and that the competitive Overwatch subreddit had some questions, we'll say. The main subreddit, which honestly doesn't usually engage with esport content very much to this date, seems super engaged, and they were like, wow, this is really cool. Like, I haven't really followed esport before because I don't really know anything about the teams and players, but man, if there was a team in my hometown like that, actually could be really cool, and I could see myself going to the arena. And for us, I mean, that really, I think, kind of validated the strategy in some ways. Is we do want to make this more inclusive, and we do want to make sure that we're respecting the teams and the way that esports has grown to this point, but we want to try to bring more people into the fold, and we think the city-based teams is the way to do that. But what city-based teams also allows us to do is we envision a future, and I don't think this is actually that far away. I'm sure you know a lot of these guys in esports today that own teams there's a lot of investment money coming in. A lot of the investors that are coming into esports are coming into it because they see really attractive opportunities to bring people into arenas that they own. I think that's why a lot of the NBA teans, you see them investing in esports, because they have access to arenas that sit empty 60% of the year. And it's empty because there's only 82 games, or actually only 41 games in your arena. So I think you'll start to see throughout the world the building of more esport facilities. So you already have, like, we have the most basic example is like kind of what we have like in Santa Ana, the esports arena, right? Where there was a tournament a few months ago, but I think you'll start to see that evolve, and there'll be different levels of that. And I think what we hope by having these local teams is we get to a world in a few years where every team has home games, and it gives fans more of an opportunity to engage with esports. Like right now, the only way you ever get to watch esports live is if you live in like Los Angeles, Seoul, Shanghai, or Berlin. Like, that's the only place where there's ever a regular esports competition. There's millions of kids around the world who would love to go to an esport event and buy a jersey and sit down and engage with fans and go to a fan meet and greet and watch the tournament. But they just don't get the opportunity because it's really expensive to travel to those cities. So we think eventually we'll get to the point where we'll have teams actually playing matches, like home games in those cities with home fans. And what that's going to do is unlock significant amount of potential revenue for teams in terms of local sponsorships, in terms of merchandising, tickets, concession, all of the ways that, if you look, I mean, you can go Manchester United is a public company. Like, you can actually go download their entire income statement. You can see like how much of the revenue they make from in-venue things. And we think that down the road, that's going to be a huge step forward for esport to localize it in that way, so that fans have an opportunity to engage with it, engage with the players, build that stronger bond, and then also unlock additional revenue for teams.
So when you kind of roll it back a little bit, you're talking about the whole home game idea and, fans being able to come out and watch. Does that kind of mean in the future you're looking at having, cities play against each other in a home city, or like to play an away game if you're the team traveling, and actually have them physically play in the arena?
That's the hope. Again, this isn't like a 2017 or 2018 thing. This is farther down the road. But we thought it was important to start, like, if we wanted to do this city idea, we thought it was important to start it from the beginning and lay the groundwork, and then work towards what we think is going to be the future anyway, and start that way from the beginning.
And then how do you kind of choose the cities then who get a team to represent them?
So I don't think we don't have like a list of, there's not like a PowerPoint slide somewhere that says these will be the 25 cities. I think we had about 125 owners and representatives of traditional sports and esport teams out at BlizzCon this weekend. We hosted a meeting on Friday with them. They saw the announcement, and then we had a private meeting where we talked through the plans. I thought it was important to let everybody know that, because I've heard a lot of stuff on Reddit and on Discord about how we're ignoring the existing teams and we're going to destroy all the existing teams. This is completely the contrary. In fact, like every single person who owns an Overwatch esport team today, almost every single one of them was at BlizzCon. And most of them came up to me and said what an awesome time they had, and thank you so much for involving them. So I think we absolutely are trying to include everyone. And the way that we're going to go about assigning teams and the cities is through a team sales process that we just kicked off over the weekend. We don't have a ton of details to share on exactly how that's going to break down. But I can assure you that everybody involved in the ecosystem today, and a lot of people who are interested in being involved in the ecosystem, are going to be included in that process. And the teams that we end up with in the first year will be a result of that.
All right, so you kind of segued nicely into my next question. We saw a ton of really high-profile esports team owners, mainstream sports owners, even some tech businessmen were there, very notable stature. And we've seen this as a recent trend, actually. We've seen a lot of mainstream sports money flowing into the esports industry, venture capital money flowing into the esports industry, in cases like NRG, Team Liquid most recently, Dignitas. And it's really exciting as an esports fan, but do you see any potential pitfalls, perhaps pushing out the existing teams that don't get this kind of funding or overinflating the market?
So there's a ton of pitfalls with this overinflating them. One of the things that keeps me up at night is people being too aggressive around the space. And I there's some people that say that there's an esports bubble. I don't think we're anywhere near a bubble, but there's a ton of money coming into the space. And I think, to me, the biggest pitfall is none of these people who run traditional sports teams have any idea how to run an esports team. They have no idea how to scout esport players. And I think that's why what you see currently in the market, where you have the Sixers and you have the minority owners of the Warriors, and you have some of these people coming in and pairing up with existing esports teams, makes a lot of sense, because they recognize that they have a lot that they can bring to the table that, for in the case of the Team Liquid deal, they have a lot that they can bring to the table that Team Liquid doesn't have, but they also recognize that Team Liquid has a lot that they can bring to the table that as investors they don't have. So I think that path is that we'll continue to see more of that going forward. And I actually think as an esport fan, if I just put my fan hat on for a minute, I think that's awesome. I think these guys they're really savvy guys. Like, they've run traditional sports teams. They understand how to do that. And I think I want to get to a world where, as an esports fan, I can drive to my local arena or studio or whatever it is, buy my ticket, get a hot dog and a beer, and buy a jersey and sit down and watch an esport match, and 2 or 3 hours later drive home. I think that would be so cool, because that's one of my favorite things to do in the world, is to drive up to Staples and watch the Clippers. Sorry, ChanManV. We need to have experiences like that for esports fans too. And I think these guys that are investing into esports, they know how to do that. So I think as an esports fan, you should be really excited about the future where those capabilities get brought into the sport that we love.
I just want to say,
all of us want to jump on that.
Yeah. Well, first off, I just want to say that, I was fortunate to be with some friends who happened to be, people that were, potentially interested in all of this. And I, as a fan or whatnot, it was so cool seeing all of the esports team owners that we all love dearly in the same room as a lot of these other owners and investors that we respect as businessmen and just whatever, whatnot. So how cool is it that Blizzard essentially has made a mixer for these two groups of people? I mean, seriously, right? I mean, we're talking about the Overwatch League, but we're talking about Dignitas, Team Liquid. Look what's happened to them. That's a future in my eyes. And I think seeing these groups of people in the same room, there's probably a lot of folks that were very happy to get a chance to exchange contacts, start conversations in that room.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's cool. Look, I mean, that was really important to me. As we were just putting together the plan for how we were going to announce the Overwatch League and the event that we had on Friday. I have I have just as much respect for what Hastro's built as I do for, you know, what I'm trying to think of whose picture ended up on the internet from Friday, but like guys like, you know, Robert Kraft, who everybody saw, there was a tweet about it, but like guys like Hastro, guys like Jack, like those guys have built awesome brands and businesses, and I think it's important to us that we treat them exactly the same way as we treat the folks from traditional sports, because they have just as much expertise, even if it's in different areas that they bring to the table.
Yeah, as a big fan of Team Liquid and the Warriors, if they have a San Francisco team, that's like my dream come true right there.
You guys have so much already. That's why don't they come down to Florida, man? It's
ChanManV, they had to basically be the laughing stock of the league for like almost 2
years. For a really
Okay,
long time.
right,
Okay,
that's true.
Jason, go.
Okay. So this is, I think, a really important question. It's not like on the list we have, but it's like a follow-up to this. Is like, how are you guys looking at protecting the esports organizations compared to the traditional sports? Because the money, the funds that traditional esports has compared to esports organizations is completely different. And obviously you can't just allow esports organizations like Cloud9 or NBS to be pushed out. So is there any sort of like protection in plan or in the pipeline for them to make sure they're incorporated into the scene? Or are you looking at them maybe being bought out by traditional sports?
I don't know. I don't think, like, our job's not to influence that at all. I think what I'm focused on is building what I think is going to be the best system going forward, where people can feel like they're investing in something that is a real asset that actually has IP attached to it, which is really, really important to think about in esports. Like, you know, having a guaranteed spot in a publisher run league, I think is really, really important, an important step in ensuring stability for years to come. So I think that's what we're focused on. I think, you know, as ChanManV said, you know, we hosted a mixer on Friday. I think it's also important to us that those worlds get together, and to the extent that what we're putting together around Overwatch League can facilitate conversations between all those people, I think that's a positive for everybody involved. Because again, like if we went out and had a bunch of owners from traditional sports that have no history and have no idea how to run an esports team, I don't think it's going to go very well.
Okay, I actually can agree with that. Yeah. I don't know who's next up on this one.
I don't know. What do you got for me? Come on.
There's some more in here. I guess just a very open, general question. What are you looking for in teams that want to be part of this league? Like, is it just going to be if you have the money, you can buy your way in? Or I assume you're going to be kind of hand selecting.
Yeah, it's not about money. I mean, having a buy-in is strictly because we want team owners to be invested in building and growing this for the long term. And I think the way that we're structuring this with a guaranteed spot, you know, with a share in the league economics for teams, I think that because we're doing that, that's worthy of an investment. And we want people who are going to invest in this and feel, because they invested, like they want to help grow and build awesome brands around their city and help this thing grow. So I think that's an area that we're super focused on. I think what we're more interested than like who bids a ton of money is like, what capabilities do people bring to the table? We want to make sure that all the owners we work with are best in class operators, people who have capability with local sponsorship and advertising, people who have capability with finding and growing and fostering the best esport talent, people who have capabilities in terms of local venues and activations. I think we want to make sure that we're getting people who have capabilities across a broad range of areas that we want to continue to grow and invest in. And the hypothesis is that if you take Overwatch, which I think we can all agree is a pretty awesome game, you create a great structure where people can invest in and have it be grow and be sustainable for the long term. And then you add best in class owners and operators who are invested and bring capability to the table. We think this thing is a huge opportunity to be tremendously successful for a really long time.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the league is a centralized, I guess you could say, storyline for the entire the game and community is extremely important, and we've seen it be successful in other games too. from as a community member, as somebody that organizes events too, how will you guys like? I guess how lenient will you guys be about like teams participating in other events?
Well, we haven't shared any details on that yet. I mean, I think we really want to have an off season.
Yeah,
For a lot of
that's
reasons.
awesome.
I think it's really tough. I talk to some of these pro Counter-Strike players, and it's hard, man. Those guys are on the road like every single week. They never have time to practice. Like, I was talking to a guy the other day who's like said he literally hadn't been to his apartment in almost 6 months. It's
Oh my
it's rough,
God.
right? And I think we want to create like a consistent season where every single year, when Overwatch League happens, and then it goes away for a little while, and that's okay. Like, it's okay that it goes away. We want to have third-party tournaments happen. We want to have the ability for teams and players to go participate in other things, and we don't want to like control the entire ecosystem and say that nothing else can happen but Overwatch League. So that's going to be an area that we focus on. We'll have more details, like all the details around teams and players and like exactly what player contracts will look like. That whole structure we'll have out in the next couple months as we roll this thing out. But I think the off season is going to be great for community and third party events, and then also if players actually want to take a break, God forbid.
No, we definitely need an off season, please, for sure. So
and actually, in the video, like in the video for it, talks about like you can prove yourself to be put into the combine through third-party events. So that's definitely something that's exciting. But we talked about like the long-term goals, like 2018, 19, more towards 19. But what about like the immediate future? What's happening with the whole league? Are teams being like floated into a centralized area and matches will be casted from there? Are we looking at them playing in their home cities? Do they need to live in their home cities right away? Like,
yeah, those are all good questions. I think if I say anything about that right now, the operations team will strangle me. But the idea is like we're probably not gonna. It's not gonna be the kind of thing where everyone's playing home games and lives in their home city in the first year. Like like I said, we're gonna work to that. But I also think like only playing games in one location is not great. As I mentioned earlier, like it kind of sucks that you only get to watch certain competitions if you live in LA or Shanghai or Seoul. So I think we ideally it'll move around a little bit, but we'll have more details to share on that. We should have that pretty early next year, rolling out details. And we've built you can already go to overwatchleague.com, and there's a page up there with some information around the league, and we're going to be using that and rolling out a full feature rich website in the coming months that's going to have all of the details. But that's going to be the sort of hub for everything around Overwatch League.
All right, cool.
I have like I can stay for like 10 more minutes, so let's rapid fire it.
Yeah, real quick. World Cup. So World Cup was, in my opinion, a very successful event. Really enjoyed it. I wanted to see if this is going to be an annual thing or what your thoughts on it generally were.
So I hope now that people saw the Overwatch League announcement, they understand why we did World Cup and why we didn't. There was a lot of stuff in the feedback from the community around like, oh, why is Blizzard not doing like a real esports event? And I think now that you've seen our announcement and that we're going this sort of city-based team route, we thought the other thing that we really need to layer on that is national team competition. And for this first year, we did the fan voting thing because we really want to try to get the community more engaged in esports and try to give them something to root for. And I agree. I think it was hugely successful. We had huge engagement on the vote. Viewership was awesome throughout the tournament. We had I think it was someone told me that we had the highest viewership on Twitch for a Korean stream of anything we've ever done before. We had like over, I think it was like 45K on Twitch watching the Korean stream, which is pretty crazy considering, I don't know, you probably know the actual number, Ben, but I think Twitch penetration
just about that point. Yes.
Yeah. But Twitch penetration in Korea is like 5%, right? It's like very tiny percentage of the market. So we're growing every day. Gotta give a plug for my man Ben. So I think viewership was really successful, and I think we we really had a blast with the tournament. It was so cool having, I mean, think about like, we had 2 teams from Southeast Asia make it to BlizzCon. They were there for opening week, Thailand and Singapore. Like that's never happened before, that you get, you know, the players from a country like Thailand who normally doesn't get a lot of exposure on the international stage actually gets to come and participate against teams from the West. I think that's really, really cool. And the World Cup is the best way to do that. I think we had like 54 countries that could participate this year. A lot of that is like legal stuff. But my hope is that we can continue to build out that World Cup program. I don't know. It's something that we're still deciding if it's an annual thing, if it's a biannual thing, like how that actually works. But if anything, I can promise you that if we do it again, we'll do it bigger, and we'll make it more of an all-star event and less of a kind of like celebrity show match event. I think
I like that.
The idea, like, look, like everybody wants to jump on the Korea train, and I'll tell you why Korea won the World Cup. Korea didn't win the World Cup because of the infrastructure in Korea or because Korea is good at other video games. Korea won the World Cup because those 6 guys that were on Team Korea wanted it more than everybody else. Every single night I saw those kids, they were scrimming. I mean, Jason, you were with these guys all weekend. They were scrimming every night. They weren't going to the bar. They were going back to the hotel and watching VODs. Like they just wanted it. And
they were the first ones there and the last to leave.
Yeah, they were not going to lose that tournament. And I think that level of dedication is awesome. And I think that's the only story that should be coming out about why Korea won, is they just wanted it more.
Well, that perfectly segues again. Awesome. What do you think it was about the South Korean team? I mean, not just their mentality and their work ethic, but I know, Nate, that you're a player, an avid player of Overwatch and a fan of the game itself. What do you think what do you think it was that set that team apart?
So my favorite thing about Korea, I'm a little bit of a Miro fanboy. So this
aren't we all? Aren't we all at this point?
This will be colored by that, but I love how, like, you know, 6 months ago, what do they say on Discord? No aim, no brain. I'm a Winston main.
Yep.
And this idea that like Winston is this low skill cap hero. And I think what Miro proved in the World Cup is that every single hero in Overwatch has a ridiculously high skill cap. It's not just Tracer and Genji that are really hard to play. And like he did things with Winston that I think people didn't even realize were possible. Like just the way that he managed his shift, like jumping onto certain ledges and sliding off and hitting shift at the perfect time, so he's already cooling down while he's in the air. I mean, he's taken that hero to the next level, and I am personally extremely excited to see, as the Overwatch League launches and as Overwatch esports continues to grow, that players like Miro, who are going to be growing up as Overwatch players, like you think about it, like we're pretty old, Ben. Like we didn't grow up. We have lots of bad habits from other games, and there's going to be a whole generation of kids that grow up as sort of native Overwatch players, and they're going to take this game to just an obscene level in terms of skill. And I for one can't wait to see it. And I think that was the lesson of Korea, is they're taking Winston and Zarya and like their Ana player.
Oh god.
Oh my
Jaehong.
I had
like literally everyone on that entire roster is just scary
yeah
good.
Well, and the scary thing is their Lucio, he's not even a player, he's just a coach. But yeah, and I love like, I don't know, I personally, I like to see a little friendly banter in esports. I like you know, play nice, play fair, of course, but every now and again it's okay to have a little fun with it. And yeah, man, that was it hurt me a little bit as an American with my I voted sticker when Miro pinned Seagull and waved to him. That was rough.
Yeah.
Oh, are you sure that wasn't Tailspin on Eichenwald at the end there?
Oh, you're right.
That was
Oh my god, that was like the cruelest pin of all time.
And that's what's really cool too.
He was pinning America's hopes of the tournament.
No,
but to bring it back to
to
bring it back to the World Cup a little bit, is there any like hopes to use this as like an MSI, like in League of Legends, or an All Stars kind of thing, where you have exhibitions? Because obviously within the league, right, this is only mostly probably North American for the first year. I think what that made the league really excel was the World conflicts, like the world's battling it out against each other, different regions. Is that something you guys are looking at doing as well?
Yeah, it's a possibility. I mean, I think we're still like, we're going to spend the next month or so going back and like, what do we like about the World Cup? What would we want to do differently next time? And I think that's one of the things we heard loud and clear from the community is like, we really want to make sure that like the best players possible are representing our country. So I think we'll look into ways to doing that.
And it's probably going to be a BlizzCon type of thing. I mean, are there championships? Do you anticipate championships being at BlizzCon or off of BlizzCon? Because I mean, I'm seeing
like for Overwatch League
or just general, yeah, Overwatch League, and I mean, I'm seeing like in Hearthstone, for instance, they're taking the championship off of it next year, and I'm wondering if that's a trend.
Well, I think there's always going to be an awesome Overwatch esport event at BlizzCon. I don't know exactly what that'll be for next year or the year after, but there will always be something awesome. Like we built, like, I don't know, for anyone that wasn't there, hopefully you heard about, like, we weren't in the arena, so we just went ahead and built an arena, and it turned out really, really cool. We had like a massive line of people trying to get in all weekend, so we'll make sure we try to solve that for next year. But I think for Overwatch League, certainly as it moves forward, we think we want the World Championship for Overwatch League to be an extremely special event that lives on its own. So that will likely live outside of BlizzCon, but we'll always have something really awesome at BlizzCon. All
right. Well, I think that's going to be, we're going to wrap up, Nate, but I've got one last question for you, given that it's such a big political day here in the U.S. And I'll let you, make your, or answer this semi-political statement. Why is Overwatch the next great esport before you leave?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me.
Make esports great again?
Who are you going to vote for? Oh, I won't put you.
It's going to be huge. Yeah, it's just Overwatch is tremendous. So I think the thing about Overwatch that, like, our vision for Overwatch League, like our goal is we want to make this, it's all about, like I mentioned earlier, consistency, stability, accessibility. We want to make this like something that's around for decades and decades to come. Like, that's the goal. I mean, at Blizzard, when you think about what Blizzard does, if you were to boil it down, like, Blizzard makes iconic franchises that last forever. I mean, the people are still playing Diablo 2. I mean, we just patched it a couple months ago, right? Like, these games have a long-term appeal. And as you think about, just look around, like I have a son. I don't know, you have kids too, ChanManV. Like, my son's 6 years old. All he wants to do is play Overwatch.
Yeah.
Like, literally every day just draws. He's a filthy Bastion main, but all he does is draw me pictures of Bastion. It's great.
Disappointed.
But these kids growing up, like, there's kids growing up with Overwatch, and I think this because of how beautiful the game is, how diverse and appealing the art style and the heroes are. This I think is a game that, like, really is not just like bright and hopeful from the tone of the game and the universe, but we think the esport can be that too. And this is something that we want to build this long term and make this, like, my hope with the Overwatch League is that whoever ends up being the best player in the Overwatch League, my kid has a poster on his bedroom wall, and that's something that he aspires to be, like, just like I had a poster of Michael Jordan on my bedroom wall when I grew up. And I think that's the kind of system that we want to build. And I think, for all of the reasons that make Overwatch an incredible IP that's going to last for decades and decades and decades, the fact that this is a game that is so appealing to such a broad range of people, and the fact that you have kids in middle school and all they do is talk about and play Overwatch, and they're going to grow up with Overwatch. We feel pretty good that this is going to be a game that's around for a long time. And I think the structure that we're building is built for the long term, and hopefully it'll be around a long time too.
All of that came through perfectly in the intro video, by the way. The posters on the wall, all of that. So nice.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, Nate. Well, I appreciate you being here. I know you're a busy guy, so I super appreciate that you were able to take some time and get a chance to answer our questions and hang out with us.
Anytime, ChanManV. Super fun. Been listening to your podcast for years, so super cool to finally be on it. And obviously, Ben and Jason, two of my favorite people. So
Oh,
let me know,
thank you.
or at least two of many of my favorite people.
Good save. Good save.
Any time, I'd be happy to come back whenever Kiki lets me.
All right, cool, man.
Thanks, Kiki.
Kiki, thanks, Kiki.
Thanks,
She's there
Kiki.
somewhere too. She's obviously out of the pic, but yeah, thanks, Kiki, for sure. We're gonna take a quick break, guys, and then we're going to reset some of these cams, and then we're gonna continue talking about some of the BlizzCon announcements, Sombra, of course, and all that good stuff. But we're gonna say bye to Nate for now. Bye, Nate.
See you guys. Thanks.